Should be just another second. I'm establishing the connection to YouTube. Okay, Steve, go ahead and start the meeting.
Good morning. I'll call this meeting to order, the Architecture Review Board, May 19th. The first order of business would be approving the minutes from May 19th.
I move to approve.
I second the motion.
Naylor,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Childs. Bill's absence, I guess, huh?
Mhm.
Yes or no? I think he's being called.
Okay.
First order of business, Sinilac Hills, 209 Sinilac Hills.
We could move that one to the end if you want to. That's mine.
All righty. We'll go to 2 Schrader, 133 Elm Court, preliminary.
Christie is able.
I see Bill. Hello, Bill.
I am voting
You're muted.
Robert Schrader to a panelist and Matt Ross
And muted it.
to a panelist. If there are any other attendees who are part of the Schrader project, please use the raise your hand function in the Zoom platform.
This is Penelope and Robert Schrader. I think we're still waiting for Matt, I guess.
Matt is attending. Let me get him online.
I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear
thank
me?
you.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Trying to start my video.
There he is.
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay. Would you like me to walk through?
Please, yes.
Sure. Okay, so there's an existing steps and small kind of little deck porch. It's beginning to fail. We're removing that, and then we're adding this covered porch. The width of that bumped out frontage, and we are just under the 30 inches, so we have a low railing, as you can see, and then we've centered the columns, the support on the windows, as opposed to centering them right in the middle, just to avoid from blocking the view through the windows. And then we've created a little entrance denoted by that reverse gable. We plan on using AZEK and TimberTech decking, AZEK wrapped columns, and lattice work at the bottom with a skirt at the perimeter. And we plan on matching the existing shingles and that new roof at both new roofs. And that's the general overview of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a nice, that's very nice. I think that's well-designed front porch, and I like the 3D modeling of it. I'm not necessarily against the lower profile of the beam above the columns, in the sense that if you really did a beam that would be proportionate to the columns, we'd be bringing the beam down very low over the porch. I think there's still a beam that exists there, but I think the tricky part of the detailing is where that reverse gable happens, and there's kind of a blocky detail there, and possibly, I don't know, there might be an alternative way of detailing that beam coming forward, just to keep, and it would be like the front view of it would be illustrative here. Here we go. so you see kind of that block over the beams. And
Yeah,
I may even throw it to Bill what he thinks would be a nice way of detailing that. It's a little tricky. I just think overall it's very nice. I like the bottoms of the columns. I think those need a cap. I mean, I'd make sure there's a gap underneath that wall so the Hardy's up off the deck.
yeah, there is a little
Yes.
1-inch gap.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one quick question, the beam that you're talking about, is that at that reverse gable or is that the going across the front?
The reverse gable projection, I think, is
Yeah.
the trickiest detail. And then my last comment would be, I'm not sure centering on the windows works for the column that is to the left of your entry, that is not quite in center. I actually think if that's centered in that opening, you'll have just as good a view through the windows, but I don't think you're going to pick up that centering back in the plane of the house as much as you're going to pick up that
This one, right?
it's not
The
quite
cadence
equal.
is, the
The
cadence is.
cadence is a little off, right? I think the entry one is totally fine, but I think that to the left, I think you almost have to split that in half, probably.
Oh, so you're saying the center one, really
Right.
center it on the porch?
Yeah, the distance out from the windows that are in the house to the porch, you'll never see that, you'll never perceive that you've tried to put the column out or between the windows. What you're gonna see is that the column's not, the cadence isn't right. So I would
This is, will be like.
recommend that you move that, you center that column rather than offset it.
It's too close to center to be comfortable, I guess. I'd say.
Exactly, yeah. The other thing I'm not, I suppose that you're pulling the reverse gable out from the plane of the shed roof to get a little bit more coverage, but it looks clumsy to me. You've already got looks like a 12-inch overhang on the porch, at least the 12-inch overhang on the porch from the beams, on the shed roof, from the beams to the face of the gutter board, and then pushing it out again.
Here.
Just, I'm not, something's out of whack proportionally. I don't, maybe it's that the overhang, if you extended the overhang of the reverse gable so that it matches the overhang of the porch, it would make the roof larger, wider, but it looks clipped in both directions. It looks like it's been shoved out from the plane where it should have stopped, and too narrow from the frontal view to me.
So he's saying you should cut off here, right?
No, actually what he's saying was you should extend this out.
If you make
wanna
just,
have that.
This is just tweaking the details a little. I mean, it's a very nice porch, and
yeah,
it's a nice
So-
project.
Yeah, when I look at it, I look at this quite a bit. Even and I kind of agree. There's something about that small overhang of the reverse gable. It feels like either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And if you're going to do it, it might still be out a little bit of proportion. I'm wondering if, and I'll talk, Robert and Penelope, if you want to weigh in on it a little bit and give us your feelings. But if we pushed it back in plane with the overall porch roof, you could still have that denoted entry pretty strong.
No, I think it's important to have that defined entry.
Okay,
It's just, to me, the scale and proportion is, there's something not quite right with it.
And then it's
I
open all
don't
the way
know,
back to the house, correct?
excuse me?
Is that open all the way back to the house?
yes,
And if
Yes.
so, okay, so and if so, then that material at the house above the door is important to understand too. But I mean, I think this is this a final or a preliminary?
this is a preliminary.
Yeah, so, all this stuff are tweaky items that could you could iron out on your
Yeah.
way to just doing the, final drawings for it.
I,
Let me provide some input here. One of our concerns that we expressed to Matt was that with the existing design in the house, there was absolutely no protection at all at the entryway, whatever.
no, what?
No,
Go ahead, Robert, just speak up louder, please.
I'm sorry. There was no protection at all at the entryway with the pre-existing design, which is really like a small porch. So we may have overemphasized the gable a bit more than we should. Just looking for some protection on the stairs and looking down to. So I think your points are pretty well taken, and that's an area that we should look at. I mean, I think that the reverse gable shows itself pretty well in the design as it is. We really don't want to overemphasize it by having it be too obtrusive in the design. So I recognize what you're saying. And so that's an area we can look at just to try to see what happens if it's the same extension as the shed roof. And also the issue about the details in the entryway itself inside the gable. That's a good point too. I think that while it doesn't show too well on the drawing because it's shaded, you will see that through the interior of the reverse gable. So having some detail in there would be a good idea. I'm not sure what quite yet, but I leave that mostly up to Matt. That's pretty good about that.
Yeah, I think this shed roof adds a lot, or the porch adds a lot to the house. It's pretty plain right now, and this is a great a great fix, if you will. It's just fooling around with the details. I also understand, I mean, you're pushing that reverse gable out to get a little bit more coverage over the steps to the porch, and because that can be pretty treacherous in our winters. So it's not that I'm saying you shouldn't do it. It's just, maybe there's a way to kind of fool around with that gable. Maybe you make it wider and put and get a similar overhang to it that allows the connection between the reverse gable and the shed roof to be better defined. It might actually read better as a little bit larger gable anyway. I mean, Bill, you haven't said anything. You got any?
Yeah, I am wondering if you can pick the whole eave up a little bit. I know you're matching the eaves, but it's out and it's complete. It takes place of the entire eave. So if you pick it up, you might give yourself some more height to play with underneath it for detail. I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead, because I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Historically, Cape Cods, if you look at them, especially in the New England area, typically don't have front porches. Most of the porches you see in Chagrin Falls are usually from an arts and crafts style or a Dutch colonial. So I know it's nice to have a porch, but I think this is sort of challenging. I would not put the reverse gable on the front. I would just keep it a simple, clean porch. I would not. The dentals are improperly used. I wouldn't put dentals on this house. I'd keep it simple. And I think there really needs to be a great deal of study of the columnation, which means how the placement of the columns are done. I think it has to have a nice cadence across. I think on the top, if you're looking at this area here, let's see. I think this area here, you know, you got to study, there should be some sort of cap here, transition. This whole entablature needs to be studied. I would not do this for sure. I wouldn't put this on here. And I would, the side elevations, how it collides into the main mass. Typically you want to read the main mass and then have the porch either pull in, maybe on this situation, versus the arts and crafts and the Dutch colonial where they continue the eave right on down. So I think there needs to be some study and kind of restudy and resubmit this. My personal opinion, that's just me.
This is Penelope Schrader. I think without the reverse gable, though, I think it kind of just would look kind of odd.
Rocky.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think that's like a nice touch to the look of the overall structure. Without that, I don't know, I think it would kind of look not very pleasant. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I appreciate Bill's comments about style, but you have to understand that many of these homes are on Elm Court in particular have quite a variation in architecture from what we've seen, even though they're the same basic style generally. Some of them have porches, some don't. Some have, actually, in my view, strange looking porches. So what we were attempting to do here was to get away from just having the down porch, but like a small deck, and go with something which still keeps the general character of the house. So I understand it may not be in the strict colonial style, but it seems to go along pretty well with the area of the types of constructions in the general area. And it does provide, I mean, I actually have to, well, of course, I'm going to agree with Penelope that I think one of the first things we asked from that was to have some sort of an entry defined to the house that has a gable, so that we have more protection from the entrance, because this house is located facing Elm Court, but there's about a 50-foot green lawn in front of the house, pretty far back from the road. And so it's a bit of a long walk from the street to our house, and having no protection at all, or even just having a shed roof, I think would probably not really add to the architectural feel of the neighborhood. I think it's important to look at the design in context with other houses in the area, as well as looking at the individual style.
What's the date of the house?
The house was built in 1979, I think.
So it's from 79. So I mean, it's a neo-colonial.
Correct.
And I think that allows for a little more freedom. It's not a historic colonial. I agree. I think the houses around it are a bit of a mix.
It's a bit of a transition area from the old to the new. As you,
I mean, I guess I would say I do think this could be studied at the level of detail versus kind of resubmitting for preliminary. And I think the concept of a porch on this house is sound. I don't think there should be a stylistic prohibition against that. And I don't think that's what Bill meant.
Yeah. I have one more comment, and then I think we've said, seems to me like we've said enough to give Matthew a direction. Your front elevation rendering A7 doesn't seem to reflect where the grading is going, or I can't see it on the.
Oh, zoom out.
Zoom out.
So we can see kind of the whole front of the house together. Zoom out a little more, maybe, and so we can see the top of the roof and the whole thing in relation.
So there it is.
I've
Thank
got that. It's just, I'm looking on my, yeah. There, the delineation of the drawing is unclear. I can see, to the right, you can see where the grade is down by, I guess that's the garage end.
Correct.
And then if you look at the front picture, grade is not going up anywhere near as steeply. If on page C1, your actual photographs of the front of the house.
Right, we're gonna regrade. I'd like to regrade that front, kind of flatten it out a little bit.
Well, it seems, oh, well, okay. Seems steeper on your drawing than it does in reality. So the only reason I'm saying that is that the railings, I think you have a much bigger slope requiring the railings to meet code than what you're indicating on your drawing. And because we also require you to show how the grade is going to change with anything greater than 2 inches of, which is, crazy because everything's going to change by 2 inches. But so your drawing really should, especially your front elevation drawing, really should reflect the actual grade. And if you're going to make a change as drastic as it looks like you're making, to my mind, I'm looking at 20, 30 yards of material you're going to have to bring in to get the grade to do what you're showing on your elevation.
Well,
And I don't think that's your intention.
yeah, one of the things that is actually accurate in terms of, maybe I didn't capture it in that elevation, is the distance from where, because you can't see it because it's being hidden by some of the landscaping, the distance from the first floor down to where we're meeting at the edge of that major portion of the front elevation falls within, and where we have the height of our capped low wall falls under the 30 inches, but we'll verify that. And if we can, get a site plan to include with that and see the grading.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's what you're calling for, is really get a survey of it and put a little site plan together.
If you really, I'm looking at the photographs, and
sure,
clearly from the corner of the house, looking at the garage elevation, to the center of the house where the door is, it grade drops by 7 or 8 feet. And so I find it hard to believe that you're going to change the grade enough to meet that 30-inch requirement. And since you're close, why would you, why would you mess with the grade, deal with the architecture to fit the grade rather than changing the grade to fit the architecture?
Except that, because I think you're absolutely right, Phil, that you've got to fill, you have to add dirt and waterproof against the house and do some things in order to keep it from being a 30-inch fall. But that low railing looks tremendously nicer and actually a little bit more historic than if it were to be at 36 inches. So I'm sympathetic with what they're trying to do, which is not to have a big high, especially as you really wouldn't want a solid railing that was 36 inches tall, whereas a lower railing that's 36 inches, that's solid, can be nice. I also, and this is a different point, but in terms of the re-entrant gable, that is the, over the entry door, I think one really nice thing about that on the front elevation is that it kind of centers the whole house, because it really is kind of in the center. If you include the kind of right-hand side addition, it really kind of centers the whole thing in a nice way. from the front of the house gives a strong center point to it, which is right.
Yeah.
Which is a nice feature in and of itself. And I'm saying that not necessarily, it may not be stylistically as correct either.
All right. Well, I'm going to study all those areas, and we'll come back. And I appreciate everybody's comments. Thank you.
I agree.
In terms of where we are, this is a revise and resubmit, I believe, from the number of and varied comments that have been made.
But you're not required to get a preliminary approval for this project. You could revise and resubmit for final or for preliminary. It's up to you.
Okay.
I mean, there's no need to have a preliminary approval like there is in a new house.
Okay. All right. I will.
So the list of things that we were discussing were the cadence of the pillars, the need for dental molding, the elevation drop off, which would affect the height of the rail or wall. How far
Tying the roof, tying the reverse gable into the main roof.
right, and how far it sticks out, yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else?
This is Bill Childs. I think you really need to study the massing portions. It's just there's a book called Get Your House Right, which I've referenced a million times. I think you really need to look through that book, and I'm not against having a porch. I just think it has to be, well detailed and well thought out. I don't agree with the reverse gable. I mean, if you do put a reverse gable, it should be a pediment. It should be traditional. It shouldn't have pork chop returns. It should be, if it's going to be pulled out, it shouldn't just be cantilever. There should be columns to define that entry. So there's multiple things I think that needs to be studied or worked on the composition on the front of a house in Chagrin Falls.
Another book to consult when you're trying to work with this awkward period of the 70s where you see some of the earlier styles and then they're doing this minimal traditional thing by the 70s is I'm sure you're familiar with it, Virginia McAllister, Field Guide to American Houses. And there's a section called Minimal Traditional that deals with some of the issues that Bill's talking about with photos that give you ideas and feel for where you might go with this. And I agree with Bill on the weighting of this. We've already talked about that today.
Bill, what's the name of that book you just recommended?
It's called Get Your House Right. Here's a picture of it, if you can see it in my screen here. And it's a pretty simple book, straightforward. I mean, anyone could use it, whether it's a layperson or architect or anything. It just gives kind of the basics 101. And there's other books like too, but I think that's a fairly easy to read, easy guide.
Okay, thank
But
you.
Virginia McAllister.
Yeah, this is this right here. I think, is it backwards? It looks backwards to me.
That's only your
Yeah,
screen.
it's good.
So do we have a motion on the table, Steve, that needs a second?
Yes.
Second.
So we have a motion by King, seconded by Naylor. And is this going to call it revise and resubmit?
Yes.
Okay. King,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
Childs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Matt and Mr. and Mrs. Schrader. And we'll look forward to your resubmission.
Great, thank you.
Thank you
everybody.
very much. You all have a good day.
You
Yep,
too.
thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, 79 North Main Street, Hydrate HQ awning final.
am getting Kevin online as a presenter.
Here. Hello.
Good morning,
Good
Kevin.
morning.
Morning.
Kevin, do you have any other presenters joining you today?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kevin, we'll turn the floor over to you.
All right. So the existing awning at 79 North Main Street is a chocolate brown, and it was a W design. We are contracted to replace the cover with the existing mitered frame that we made about 10 years ago and recover it in a black cloth umbrella material with lettering as shown, approximately 10 inches high on the valance and each centered over each opening by the steps to the left. And 5 inches on the rear awning for graphics. That awning's much smaller, so that's over the back door facing. And all the lettering will be in white on the black background.
Is that the, what can I say? Is that the signature of the business in that font and so forth?
Yeah, that is their logo font, yes.
And once again, I think people need to be able to put their logo on their sign. So
Yep.
black and white is a little, little stark for me, but I mean, it's hard.
What is that? I'm seeing on my screen a framed font. It's an outline.
That's
Black
just
on white.
that's just so you can see it. It's
graphics.
just white
Mm,
to give you the size.
It's like an awning to me.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
it's the same
Been there
awning
for
that was there, it's just a different color.
yeah.
Just gonna be darker.
Don't put it up today. Wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't even have a deposit yet, so let's hope. I'm not doing this for free.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
Nope.
Move to approve is presented.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion by King, seconded by Naylor. Childs,
Yes.
Naylor,
yes.
King.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Steve, Stuble's also mine if you want to move it down.
Okay.
Oh yeah, let the poor Howard Hanna people get on with their lives.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. We're ready. Howard Hanna, 40 East Washington. The famous sign out front.
Dan, I've promoted you to a panelist.
Good morning.
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 Good morning.
And is there anyone else joining you as a presenter?
I'm sorry, I just jumped on. This is Dan Riley. Are you asking me?
Yep, Dan,
Oh.
is anyone else joining you?
Oh boy, I hope so, because they're presenting.
I have Beth Skeel. I don't know which project Beth
Yeah.
is representing,
No,
if any.
Beth.
No,
Yeah,
Beth is
Beth
Beth
is
is
a
an
star.
observer.
There should be Jerry from
Absolutely.
Chacona
Jerry,
Signs.
Do you have us on the call?
Jerry, are you a phone call in?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Are we ready?
Yes, Jerry, we'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for moving us up. So I'll recap, kind of go in order. Last meeting, we did submit some additional revised drawings and renderings. Hopefully everybody has that in front of them, so I'm going to move through them in the order based on what we were trying to present and go through based on the board's recommendations. The sign drawing, we tried to show the elevated grade on the sign drawing so that everybody can get a representation that there is about a 1 foot elevated grade, which we wanted to take into play as far as not wanting to make the sign any shorter than how we had presented it. We provided 2 scaled drawings that show street views of the sign. One is a scale drawing that shows a view of the sign as a street view that has dimensional scaled elevation with a man standing next to the sign at the grade level. And then the second one shows it at the sidewalk level. We wanted to show a scaled proportion so that we could see a real view of how the sign actually looks from the sidewalk view as if you would approach the sign walking down the road. We knew that was important to the board. We took that into consideration, so we showed that as well. That should have been, hopefully everybody saw that in the presentation package as well. I submitted some photographs with some for some surrounding signs because we consider some of the comments as far as this possibly looking large and looking like a competitive billboard style looking sign. And we just wanted to show that some of the surrounding signs right in the neighborhood, down the street, around the corner, et cetera, we're not feeling that we're really going to be in any kind of competition as far as height or proportion goes. Sidewalk to top of our sign, we'd be at 8'3". And I think if you jog around the neighborhood, we have signs that are 10'6", 12 feet, 9 feet, 7'2". Those are just some of the examples. Merrill Lynch across the street is 7 feet. Our feeling is, again, just that our sign is in proportion, and we tried to keep it as small as we could. We're keeping it within code. Of course, you know, we've talked about that before, but we didn't want this to look like a billboard. We understand everybody's concern with that, so.
Look at the Merrill Lynch sign. Go back to that if you would.
Yeah.
That's 5 feet tall. It's
on a flat spot, Steve, and it's the same size. I mean, you're just talking about a little of extra base. Like their sign is under 5 feet tall at the high side. I think that the fact that it's actually pushed back off the sidewalk a couple feet, you can see graphically. I don't know if that's dimensioned, but I think they've really addressed everything that's been brought up, and there's nothing wrong with this sign.
I think it looks like a billboard.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Pardon me.
I think it looks like a billboard. It is elevated because of the wall and because it's a level sign, you might say. Their colors are their colors, and I certainly wouldn't take that away. But because of the garishness of their logo and sign, it just looks like a giant real estate sign in somebody's front yard.
It doesn't look like a real estate sign. I think that's,
well,
I don't
we
think
just
that's
don't
a
agree,
fair,
that's all.
I don't think that's a fair characterization of what they're doing. I think
Well, one sign that was
putting their
not
logo up
presented
in an approved manner, and they're off of that wall, so they're up in a higher. I mean, look at their entry. I mean, if they put the sign up on their entry, it would be 15 feet above the sidewalk.
Well, I wouldn't care for that either.
They're sliding it back a couple feet off the wall, so it's not going to feel like it's right at your shoulder as you walk by.
It's over your head.
And I think the fact that it's photoshopped in makes it a little more crisp and pop off the drawing, but the actual sign is just going to look like a sign on the street. And you guys aren't going to think about it twice once it goes in.
One sign that wasn't presented as part of the package that I went down and measured was the BP sign on the corner. And the BP sign is exactly the same height as this proposed sign. And it is narrower in width than this sign. And it's comparable to this because you've got that metal solid mass that you're dealing with, that some of these other signs are either, you know, a darker color that recedes, or they have voids in the sign that don't make them look like a solid massing. That BP sign has that same feeling because it's got loud contrasting colors on it. So it's the combination of the contrasting colors, the sign of this being a solid mass, the fact that it's mounted on top of a retaining wall, and that you're right next to a pedestrian sidewalk entering a National Register historic district that's concerning. So I went down and I stood on the street, and I think a solution I can offer here would be to move this sign closer to the driveway, because then it is not mounted up on a 30-inch high retaining wall. It's right at the driveway sign. And because of the color that's part of this sign, and I would also reduce the size to maybe 3 feet wide by 4 feet high. And because of the colors involved here, you will be able to see that still from downtown Chagrin Falls very clearly. But I still feel that this proportion, because of the color and because of the solid massing and because of the location, is not compatible with this location.
This is Bill Giles. I
The
agree.
usage of the sign, the gas station wants you to come in and buy gas, and a hamburger joint wants you to come in and buy hamburgers. This is not a house for sale, so you don't really need to shout, "I'm for sale." It's just kind of an ID of the building, which is a very distinguished building. And the idea that we're comparing this sign to the gas station speaks for itself. You just need to identify that you're there, not have the purpose of a billboard. And you already have a sign on the building regardless. So I don't need why it needs to shout. I just don't understand. The sign across the street, Merrill Lynch, is a subtle, dark sign. It doesn't scream at you. And so there should be no comparison to that sign at all.
Yeah, everything else is, all the other signs that were used as examples are all basically black and white or muted colors.
Hanging signs, they're 12 feet tall, but they're hanging signs. So they're not 12 feet tall in all signs.
Right.
I know you guys aren't agreeing with me on this, but I mean, look at this picture. What are the objectionable things in this picture? I would say the phone, the giant utility pole, all of the junky stuff that's all in front of that sign is objectionable. I think that sign is actually fine. And I really hesitate. I mean, so Wendy, scale wise, if you take something that's 5'4" wide and you make it 3 feet wide, and if you take something that's 5'9" high and you make it 4 foot high, you're not making it 2/3 as big. You're making it half as big in area because you're multiplying those two things together. So basically you're telling them their sign has to be half as big, which is much smaller than code allows. I mean, I think you guys are kind of overreaching here. And I think you got kind of this gut reaction, but that sign's way back. It's up at the door now. It's off of that wall. You know, maybe you could drop it 3 inches. I don't know if you could maybe lighten up the base a little to relieve your concerns, but I really don't think I don't think this matter is being treated fairly. And I'm not sure what the big brouhaha is about.
Well, I've tried to explain where my position is, so I guess we'll just differ on this, but I do think there's a solution here where we can move a smaller sign towards the driveway that will also give the business a classier appearance. The whole thing is obnoxious to me in the size of putting something the size of the BP gas station sign larger, mounted on a retaining wall at that location.
That's succinctly put. I agree tremendously with that. And the purpose of it is to identify the building only. It is an advertisement in the way that it's being presented. And this is the
That's what
first time.
signs are, Steve. That's what they're trying to do. They kind of want.
No, my address at my house is to identify who's here. That's to identify the business that's there. Not to,
Who are you to say that they don't need to advertise their business presence? I mean, I think
well,
you'd have
to this
ask
degree.
Anna,
To
they'd
this
probably say they
degree.
really need to advertise their business presence.
Quite frankly, Howard Hanna is a very classy organization in almost everything they do, and I don't understand why why they need this giant sign. I think it's because of the location.
If I can interject and just say, I mean, we keep taking away when we talk about Merrill Lynch across the street. It's the same construction as that sign. It's a metal sign. That sign has a radius. That sign has protruding letters. That sign's black and silver. It's not in character with anything else on that building. It's the same square footage. It's the same height. Merrill Lynch is 18 inches from the sidewalk. We're 33 inches back, almost double. So, I mean, just in comparison, as far as what a business right across the street has, doing the same thing, identifying the business, that's all they're doing. It's as if we're right across the street and we're not being able to do the same thing in the same way, taking a lot of things under consideration. We have many more challenges that nobody else does right across the street. We have an elevated grade. We have junky poles with things on them. We have a phone booth in front of us. We have a lot of challenges that we're trying to overcome and also take into consideration everybody around us at the same time. Nobody walks into Merrill Lynch and buys anything. It's an image. That's all it is. Like, same thing. We're not selling hamburgers. We're not selling gas. We're just trying to compete in the same area with everybody else and have that image be out there. And we're just asking as best we can that, you know, making all the considerations that we did for the third time, that, you know, we're just within what everybody else is within, as also giving us consideration to that there's a national brand here that we're not trying to deviate from, but we've made a lot of concessions with the lay of the land, with what's around us. I just think that it's important that we keep that under consideration. And we meet code as best we can, if not went under where we could. We're not asking for any more than that.
This is Dan Riley. Am I on? I don't even know if my audio is on.
Yes.
Okay. If I may, as you all know, Howard Hanna is really a staple of that community. We signed a lease in 1970. We've been in the same location for 50 years in Chagrin Falls. We've been looking for a long time to invest ourselves and to buy a building. When this opportunity came up a year ago, we really wanted to establish ourselves in the market, own our own building, and create our own presence. Before we even purchased it, we checked on the signage, square footage, location, number, and everything. It was a key part of our investment in this building when we purchased it. From what I understand, and I'm not an expert on any of this, but from what I understand, everything we've done is within the guidelines of what is permitted in the market. I absolutely appreciate everybody's perspective, and I want to, within reason, accommodate everything that we're all discussing. Some things we can't change. Those are our colors. Can't change that. They're on almost 300 buildings in 10 states. That I can't address. And we looked into that before we purchased the building. Size, dimension, location, everything. I don't know. I do not want to reduce it in half. I do not want to put it on the corner. There's no question that we want a presence and to be visible from as much as possible from the main street. And, you know, so again, we did the research before we invested in the building. I think everything here is within the guidelines, and it feels more like it's our colors that is the distraction, and that I can't change. Now, from a sign perspective, a couple things that I'm hearing, and again, maybe I should back myself out of some of these comments, but one is I guarantee there's going to be ground cover there that's going to cover most of that lower base. And from a sign perspective, I'm asking this of our sign guys, maybe there's a way that it looks like it's more on a pedestal than on that base. Maybe that's part of the wall of appearance that's showing there. Is there a way to have a 2-foot column going up instead of that entire base, so that our sign itself is not changing, but the base might be minimized? I don't know if that is a sign problem, and I don't know if that alleviates some of the concerns that I heard about this looks like a billboard, if that were reduced.
I mean, it definitely, we can look into redesigning the base where maybe it cuts in and gives way to the sign be more free looking. We got to take a look at the grade, and when you've got ground cover and snow on the ground at that height, there's going to be a point when you're going to start to encroach the sign itself.
Right, so I would not change that height. I would just, instead of having a full 5 foot 4.5 base, the base is more like 2 to 3 feet under it. Again, only if it alleviates some of the concerns on the board here.
Yeah, I think that would lighten things up. I do think, I guess, I'm not sure why everyone's so adamant, but I think the members of the board are in danger of overreaching.
So Dan, if I hear you correctly, if you take the yellow line here.
Who's speaking, please?
This is Harry Edwards, the zoning inspector.
I hear.
If you took the yellow line, that horizontal yellow line, and instead of having this green infill here, have a column and leave this all open, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, but again, I'm a little bit out of school. For all I know, I'm doubling my cost of the sign, and I'm not even, I'm trying to, after 4 meetings for all of us, and I don't mean just my time or all your times, we all have things to do. This is within the guidelines, so I'm not sure what the hesitation is, but I think if there's something that can get off center and help us get this approved, I wanted to at least offer that. But yes, Harry, that's what I was referring to.
Okay, I just wanted that.
More like a 2 foot, more like a 2 to 2.5 foot, I'm not sure what it would be, base instead of that 5 foot 4. I can, in this visual here, that base looks large. Again, ground cover is going to cover most of it, and that incline will eat up, the right-hand side. But if that helps the scenario, I'd like to at least toss that out. Really want to accommodate, I want this building, I want Howard Hanna to continue to be the dominant presence in that market, but I can't just, for lack of a better word, roll over and go with a black and white wooden sign there.
We're not asking for a black and white sign.
I know, I'm sorry, I didn't quite mean that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm trying to work with you here because it's the color that is making a big impact on the sign and the location of the height on the retaining wall. And we've been at this meeting 3 times, but I think we've basically said the same thing 3 times and the same sign keeps coming back. So I don't know how else to point it out to you that the proportion and scale of this is what's wrong. And I see a solution moving it towards the driveway, which is closer to a natural grade level with a pedestrian passing by. And if you look at the intermediate school sign, that sign, you have to go measure, it's about 4 feet high and maybe 3 foot wide. And I know you're trying to deal with a proportion, that you use for your branding and the way your signage works, but that would work closer to the driveway and still be quite visible from downtown. And I think be less obnoxious, more tasteful, more proportionate, and more within the image of what Howard Hanna is trying to do, instead of screaming a sign down the street.
This is Bill Childs. I just had a few comments if I could. I have an office right there at the corner of Franklin and Washington, and the size of this and how large and how bold this, I'll be able to see that sign from my parking lot behind me. I don't think this big of a sign, this much color, we're going to start looking like a strip center like every other community. I think if this was in Hudson or Gates Mills, they would not let you do this big and bulbous of a sign. I think it starts to take the integrity and the tradition and the value and the look of Chagrin Falls away in the character when you do large signs like this. You showed us a lot of signs that have black and white on poles or on posts. Why can't you, because of the colors, you'll be able to see this sign if it's half that size from my office. Because I look up that way all the time. Why can't you do what Wendy said? Maybe put it back where the drive is, put a post, put it on like a wrought iron, and just maybe make it half the size or a quarter the size. You'll still be able to see it. I mean, because of the color and the way the boldness and it pops, you'll still be able to see it. And that would be, being respectful to the community and tradition and make you guys look a lot more of a class act instead of putting this billboard in the front of the property. And again, I think it's going to take away the character of Chagrin Falls, but we're all trying to keep that classic, timeless feel. So I wholeheartedly agree with Steve and Wendy, 110%.
The guidelines are clear and measuring is clear. We have to weigh it all, and you should not have to change your colors. We're not going there in the least. However, because of your colors, you get more pop for your square footage, I guess is what we're saying. When this sign is a little bigger than a gas station sign, I think you can see our concern. The other thing is, this is the third meeting. No, it's not. This is the first, because of the Zoom only, we can't go and look at the materials ahead of time like we usually can. So the previous presentations didn't show the sign with the dam. So this is the first time we've seen this sign.
My understanding is that we have moved the sign towards the entrance. I think it used to be closer to the BP, and I think we've moved it back into the grade a little bit. So I think there's been some accommodation there.
Absolutely, but your presentation, your photography has been lacking and misleading, quite frankly. And this presentation is the first time that we really be able to appreciate this sign. I've been over there 3 times measuring, and I put a stick in the front yard to see what the height would be, and that helped me a little bit. But this picture that I'm looking at for the first time in my life today is the first time I've really been able to appreciate size and height of this sign.
Is there anything within this that does not fall within the guidelines?
Yes, Architectural Review Board is in charge of deciding how anything affects the community, and you've heard a lot about that this morning.
I think
Scale and proportion is part of the design review when we're in a historic district. And that's the challenge of this spot, especially on the south side of the street, where you are transitioning from that commercial downtown area into the residential National Register historic district.
I think, once again, the board should be careful to offer a reasonable solution that can be acceptable to these guys. And I don't think you can tell them to make a sign half as big as they're allowed. Maybe you're talking about moving it back and centering it on the door. This is not a historic building. They're doing everything within the guidelines and regulations. And that sign's not going to pop as much as you think it does, because that's a Photoshop. It's just a green sign. I think this is getting overblown, and I don't think ultimately you can make these guys change what they're doing as much as you think. I think maybe some kind of compromise where the same size sign is slid back a little further. Remember, it gets smaller from Main Street when it moves, as well as making the sign smaller. But I don't think, if you tell them to make the sign half as big and put it twice as far away, then it looks like a dot. And that's not right. This is all their property. So you're telling them to get, go to the far end of the property where it is far less visible from, say, around the gas station. I don't think you guys necessarily have a strong leg to stand on. So I just think you should offer a much more accommodating compromise than you have.
I feel we've offered a compromise by moving the sign more towards the driveway and bringing the proportion down to match that location.
And we haven't
Part I don't
discussed
agree with.
lighting. If this sign is lit, you can imagine how it will stand out beyond a reasonable level, beyond what you really need.
So do we have a motion?
The motion would be to revise and resubmit, given
Second.
the parameters that we have discussed at length.
Second.
Okay. Joan, do you have all the comments?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to revise and resubmit, motion made by King, seconded by Naylor. Childs,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Naylor.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Jerry and Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, you want to go to 209 Sinlac Hills next?
So King Holden, 209 Sinlac Hills. Porch, final, hopefully.
Phil, do you have any homeowners or any other presenters joining you?
I don't think so.
I don't see any on the line. I just wanted to double check.
So this is a house built in the 90s, I think. The rear elevation, do we have pictures, Harry?
Did you submit me some pictures?
Uh,
I don't think I have any pictures from you.
Is there a way that I could show them?
Sure, I think so. Christie?
Phil,
If
this
you stop
is
sharing, you
Christie.
can
Yes.
share your screen, Phil. If they're on your computer, you can share your screen just like Harry is. If Harry stops, you can start.
I'm working on pulling them up here. Okay. What do I do to share the screen here?
Down at the bottom. You see share screen?
Yeah. You have that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so this is an existing deck structure with what was originally a 3-season room that subsequently has turned into a 4-season room. Along the back here is the garage. And that's looking into the garage. This deck structure here is set so that it's 6 inches down from the stair, or down from this porch, existing 3-season or 4-season room. And it's too high relative to getting into the garage, so you're actually stepping down. This is an inside corner here, and this is an existing outside stone fireplace with a deck that was added to connect all of these things. So what's existing now is all of these things that are shown on the drawings or in these photographs. The proposal is to remove the deck structures, to add a covered porch with a stone floor at grade. Grade gets lowered to approximately the elevation of the garage entrance, and covers the entire area between this structure and the garage. So we can go back to your, back to the drawings. Area of the drawings, yeah, there you go. So the struggles from a design standpoint were, how do we create this covered area? They built the deck basically around a large tree that was there when they bought the house. And so they never had a problem with shade. And then they lost the tree. So they decided that they wanted to create it. They already had the stone porch, or the stone, the wood deck and the stone fireplace. They've got a hot tub that is out there, and this proposal is to create a covered area that matches the pitch of the roof of the garage, connects to that garage gable, comes out, turns 45 degrees so that it is aligned with the existing fireplace, but far enough away that you can still sit out in the open and sit by the fire, and then turns and connects to this existing porch, which has structural issues of its own. They, because it was originally a porch, they, when they added the glass and closed it, the structure itself started to fail. They hired someone to come in and put spiral helical piers in and beams. So rather than trying to connect the porch with the same gable, I stopped it short and created a smaller gable that just covers the existing sliding glass door out, so that they can come from the garage or they can come from the house, and they're undercover. It also opens up the two inside corners to allow natural light to come into the windows that are there in the kitchen and the living room, or no, laundry room. So that's the gist of the design rationale. It's a pretty simple structure. It's we talked about trying to create some sort of open truss, but because the ceilings are going to be 10 feet high, it's considerably less expensive to do a truss system, pre-manufactured truss on posts. And they're actually proposing to kind of start by just doing the structure and putting some loose stone gravel in underneath it, and then at some point they'll be able to afford to put stone down rather than concrete. So that's where we are.
The thing that worried me about this, I mean, I think the roof can be successful, although that little connector to the sunroom drops down, and I think you're going to have a hard time. It's going to run into your beam, and I think you may actually have to pick up that and let it set onto the roof of the sunroom, but be at the height. This little connector,
Yeah, right.
right there. You know, it might have to be up to work, but and then I saw you have AZAC wrap. I think the posts need the AZAC wrap as well, and maybe a little minimal detail. I know this house is not a historic house wood detail. But, you know,
Yeah.
routine little cap. But I think if the posts were wrapped,
Give
and
them
then,
a little more dimension.
well, they're
Just
6x6s. I just don't think the pressure treated is going to be, I mean, if you have a stone patio, which is the ultimate vision,
Yeah.
I don't think the posts being pressure treated exposed is kind of an equivalent material to meet the stone.
Yeah.
And you got the wrap up above. So I just think you bring it down and the column, the beam, the columns, everything aligns in a more minimal way. I mean, those would be my primary comments. It's tricky with the stone floor. That's not going to happen yet. It seems like the floor of this is now gone from being too far up to maybe too far down. I almost think if you had a deck instead that you could do right now that was lower, it would make a lot of sense. But I mean,
It's really,
backyard. I mean, they're
it's
just
economics, you know, they
Yeah.
really don't want the deck.
right.
And
And this is
some-
their
some-
backyard, right?
Yeah, somewhere between 3 steps down and 2 steps down is where we're going to end up. And it's really, we're talking about, 6 inches elevationally that they're actually looking at doing the stone now. They prefer to do the stone now, but it's a budgetary thing. So
Right.
get it covered. You can do the deck later or the stone later. Put in a deck, then you just got to take the deck out. So
Right.
This is Bill Childs. I commend you taking this project. This seems to be a challenge when you have an angle and you have a lot of existing conditions, and
yeah,
you can see it's really tough to put a roof in here and try to figure this out with, stuff that's going to happen in the future. I agree with George on this area right here. Let me just, that area where this area here, to get this to line, is it possible to pull this down and let this gable read and then let this, because I know you're trying to tie into this, but could you bring this down to here and let this gable here read, and then, this whole thing could maybe come down at this line, and then you could still read that gable beyond, and then you would solve this issue right here. Just a thought. I don't know if that's even possible. And my only other comment is I think the columns just need to be a little wider proportion wise. And other than that, that's all I had.
yeah, okay. The predicament with the predicament is the 45-degree fireplace.
Right.
So in order to define that gable. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it down to the plan, Harry, if you will. Oops, back up. No, right there. What this is really, yeah. I would have loved to have just come straight off the garage with a gable that came out, but I can't because that fireplace is there and they clearly don't want to move it. And I don't know how to define a gable when you.
No, I'm not, sorry. I'm not saying a gable. If you go down the plan, can you go down the plan, Harry? I'm not saying a gable. I think what you did is fine. The roof and the massing and everything. All I'm saying is it possible? It looks to me is that, right there at the plan. This here lines up with this gable, correct? And this roof continues out. Is that correct? Or am I incorrect on that? There's not a roof plan, but I was just assuming that. Is that correct?
Yes, it goes up and then comes down. So that's a gable.
So this line continues right through this roof plane, correct?
Yes, it matches up with.
Right. So what I'm saying is to get this to come down, could you pull this over to here and line up with this one so that this, and I know this door's off center, but then to get the gable like this, I know these all have to be equal. And then this comes over here. All I'm trying to say is so that you can get that eave down, so that eave all lines up like George commented on, so you don't have a problem with the beam running into a column. And then it would give you a little more relief in this area too, so you just don't have this little hole here. It's just a thought. I mean,
Yeah.
if you could resolve that roof slide in there.
I think that that ends up defeating the purpose of doing the structure, because it becomes, I mean, we've got 12 feet across there. You start taking 2 feet out of this direction and that direction, and now they've got, they've lost the covered area that they're looking for.
They're wet again.
I mean, hello?
They're wet again.
They're wet again, yeah. You know, I struggled with, my original thought was, can I bring that gable, that smaller gable in higher? And I can go back and look at that. I also originally had a gable. I had that come around to a gable end. And then I just, looking at that rear elevation, it just didn't work, that I had this gable end and then a lower gable that ties in. The other problem is the roof pitch on that porch doesn't match anything else that exists on the house. And so I've got to bring it in at a different elevation, or it looks silly to me.
I think it's good that you match the roof pitch of the garage. I think you have to.
Yeah.
You're really engaging with it.
Right. And have changing that end where it ties into the porch to a hip helped sort of relieve
Well,
that.
I think that all works. And I think Bill was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe if you were to try and drop this eave, I think that Bill was pointing out that alignment hurts. Maybe if you don't make it any narrower, but just like actually move it over a little bit, you could study how that, if it was a little lower, how it runs into the garage, and make sure it's not, creating a goofy condition anywhere. And then at that point, potentially, that would make sense. And I think another possibility is to actually pick up the little connector and let it just run onto the roof of the sunroom, which is not ideal.
Yeah, no,
not the end of the world either.
I mean, that's the simplest solution, is of all the suggestions we've just run through, that add some dimension to the posts, and I don't have what I drew was sort of bare bones. I want to keep it simple. Adding some dimension to it would help scale wise. I can restudy that connection, to raise it up. But they're really happy with how this proportionally starts at the garage, and it's basically the same dimension as it comes around the corner. And the starting point is at the corner of the kitchen, and dimensionally it's all scaled so that we don't take up too much space coming out into where the fireplace is. We're not hitting that window that is in the garage, or the window that's in the laundry room. We're tying it in, aligned with the posts that are already there in the rear family space, whatever, I don't even know what I called it, the rear porch. And so the only things I can continue to play with, I think, are the dimensions of the columns and the height of that connection. And I agree with you that coming out, it doesn't necessarily have to match into, if the beam matches, if the beam comes in sort of with the bottom of the gutter board of the Four Season room, then you're right. I don't have to address the issue of that the gutter board is necessarily higher. Does that make sense? George, you're muted.
I think when you come back for final, you actually you'll need to, cut through that and like show us kind of a cut through that little open area that you've created in the two directions. And that'll also help explain it because it's tricky, like.
You're saying cut through the connector?
Cut through the body of the porch in a way that exposes the hole in the little unroofed area you've created, and then that'll show everyone what the eave height is behind that, and you'll actually see part of the existing house through that whole courtyard that you've created. It'll like define that. It'll be a section of the truss of the roof, and then a view of the house beyond.
Well, here you go to A2. Oh.
Yeah, if you go up a hair, just a hair, there we go. I guess oh yeah, right.
Keep going. Right there.
Oh yeah, that view. That kind of shows part of the rationale for the height of that eave.
Yes. What I don't show is getting all the way over to the corner. I probably drew it, but I don't show it. So what?
The other direction.
Asking what? George?
Pardon?
What are your thoughts here? Should I show more over here? Or no?
I guess I was imagining like a section. Wait. Oh, I'm gotta.
Yeah.
In that way, possibly.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm just saying that is part of like figuring out what this thing is doing on the inside. But this is half of this is the primary one I was talking about. I forgot you had that.
Okay. Okay.
I just had one more comment. This is Bill Childs. Can you go to the plan, Harry, please?
Where you want me to go?
Right there. No, could you go up higher, please? The plan, yep. Farther so you can bring it. There you go.
There you go.
So my only concern, I think what George is alluding to is how do you solve some of these? This is the overhang. This is going to get a little quirky because isn't there an overhang here? You're going to have this tiny little piece of open right there, right? And like, how does this all collide together would be my concern. I mean, I know this is a really tough with this 45. It's too bad this fireplace wasn't straight. Then you could just do something with a square and then a connector and make it simple. With this this 45 makes it really challenging. I don't know, I would just be concerned about how these areas are.
Yeah, I'm equally concerned in this, primarily from the water runoff.
Right, in the snow.
You know, the plan is to basically allow those gutter edges to not have gutters, and that those two areas are, we're going to excavate out and install drainage systems so that the water can just fall in there and run to the backyard. It's sloping pretty steeply to the back of the yard. So install like drainage. It's just going to be a stone garden, if you will, a place where the water goes and they can put potted plants and they'll get some sun. And because tying any kind of gable in there just is going to create even more issue.
Right.
Maybe, you know, I know you've got a symmetrical roof there, but maybe you just do a shed roof that runs off to the, you know, in this direction. And then you don't have this one, and that might really clean it up. Because I don't think there would be no vantage point to be, oh no, I guess you're down at the eave height here. I take it back. Never mind. If you go all the way to the wall here, you're kind of stuck.
You're trapping the water.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you just don't have a place to, this roof can't die into anything if it gets over there.
No, it'd have to be a low slope flat roof, and it's going to catch all the water off the hip on the hip from both directions, basically. Well, now you've hit on all the issues. That's why we ended up where we ended up.
Do they want the fireplace uncovered? I mean, one thought I had is, what if you did a link and a link and a link to get away from the house, and then do a roof that goes over this whole fireplace, reverse gable back into, so that this is the place where everyone sits around the fireplace and you put a furniture pod around here. But I don't know the program. I'm just thinking economically wise.
Well, yeah, I mean, the issue is, this is, you know, I mean, I don't particularly care for outdoor fireplaces to begin with. And this is not a particularly well done one. So if I had my druthers, I'd say take it out and we'll put a fireplace in your new porch, and we'd have all kinds of additional solutions that we could come up with.
Right. No, that's a challenge of a design problem for sure.
So, well, I've heard what you are saying, and I can restudy some things and think about some things, but you also understand, I think you have a pretty good feel for why we're where we are. So, anything else?
Well, I'm certainly unaware of your relationship with the owners, but I'm not sure what we've accomplished here today, other than realizing we have maybe insurmountable problems to address, and perhaps a gas fireplace after removing the existing fireplace might be an option that would solve a whole lot of problems and give a better final result. I don't expect an answer to that, Phil.
Yeah. I guess I would tell you that I'm not even absolutely positive they've got numbers for what we're proposing now. But for them to consider taking it out and starting over, I'm not sure they'd even consider it at this point. So I will go back to them. I'll talk to about the what we've discussed and see, where they want to go, because of what's going on. They wanted to push forward with getting before you guys because just get, starts things moving in the right direction. Hear your comments. So at this point, I'll go back and we'll see what they want to do and how they want to do it. And
that shape could work at the lower eave height.
What shape?
Do you see my scribble? Same width, not making it narrower, just moving it over.
Yeah.
And there's running out from the sunroom, not touching anything else, and just running into the garage, because you wouldn't be tying into the garage eaves then. Then you wouldn't actually touch any of the higher eaves. I think that's a little more like what Bill was getting at.
You agree, Bill? You're muted.
It would combine those two open areas.
Yeah, so that, but I would, where George guide, wait, hold on, let me anecdote here. Like just make sure that this is pulled back so this reads as a form. But I think what George has is, so this goes like this continues, man, it's hard to draw on this, and then straight down, but this stays equal right here. So it's equal all the way around. So then you relieve all this craziness. You have, not craziness, but all this tough, it's hard to solve all that colliding into these other pure forms. And at least this would give you a pure form, and then you'd have the fireplace open and kind of that concept. So I think that'd be a cleaner solution, maybe more economical too. It's a tough one.
There's another issue. Technically, I think we're already too close to the fireplace from the standpoint of how tall the chimney is. So.
Oh, even with a low roof.
Yeah.
Well, it's 2 feet above, 10 feet away. I mean, you're starting at it. If you drop the eave down a little bit, you might be getting a little closer, but you're lower starting.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, we beat this one up enough.
Yeah.
I will. I'll go back to them and see what they, what they want to do budget-wise and whether they want to proceed and in what direction, based on our discussions. Okay.
Very good.
Good deal.
A no vote or what? Revise,
No vote.
resubmit?
I no vote.
No vote. Okay.
Okay.
Subel, 85 South Franklin Street.
A little bit of a change here, huh, Phil?
Yeah. Trying to. Okay, this is Subel residence. We met previously before COVID. They had a chance to present. I think we had a preliminary approval on this.
You did.
With some suggestions. the things that have changed, the most significant change was that the cost of putting a block foundation in and a crawl space was close to half the total budget. And we talked about maybe using fewer windows or changing the spacing on the windows of the back of the sort of the rear elevation. At the time, in terms of the plan of the original presentation, I had put a closet in the corner of the mudroom and had a seat bench so that we could put 4 windows across the rear elevation. And subsequent to that first presentation, again, for purposes of better use of this new space, we've made it 2 closets and gotten rid of the stone foundation and put it on piers, which is what is there now, even though it's a 2-story, and what's primarily is failing on the structure of the piers. Took them 80 years, but they're failing. So the new proposal is to build piers, to build a 1-story. I changed the roof pitch to match the roof pitch of the upper shed roof on this house, which subsequently squeezed the window in the bathroom. That room up there, when the house was built with the sleeping porch, was a bedroom with a door out to the sleeping porch. That's the room that was converted to a bath when they added plumbing and got rid of the outhouse. And so given the fact that it's a bath, they didn't need a door and they really don't need a large window. So I've duplicated the proportions of the upper sash of the window in the bedroom adjacent to it, with the same mullion configuration, but it is it's a small awning window. It adds light to the space. And I've added a trellis lattice work. I don't particularly care for the lattice on a 45-degree angle. This is a vertical lattice, pretty obscure, but removable so that they can have access underneath there. We've added better detail on the railings and the stairs. So we still have the door and the scale of the there's a newer concrete patio that runs across the rear of the house, and the size of the steps and the location of the door is such that we can put some posts to hold up the porch outside of that existing slat, because it's in pretty good shape. It's no more than 10 years old, but we still get steps down the back, and so that's the story. I wish I could. No, I'm gonna continue to try to get them to remove the shutters. I don't show them on the rear elevation, even though they're there.
I mean, I guess I was attached to that upper porch, but I think even last time, we had given up on that by the end of the discussion
Yes.
and approved it without that. But as a shed addition, I think this is fine.
Thank you.
You know, it's different. I mean, you know, obviously you've got to detail that with the piers. I kind of wish the piers were the little Cantelli block. So maybe you can try and get those. There's not many block there. So you could get the
Well, that we,
rusticated
I don't think it was,
block, but
we got a price for the block. But I don't think they went to the Cantelli people.
yeah.
So I'd be happy I think that'd be lovely to have just those little blocks and
Like-
they're farther enough away that even if they're a little bit different, that you wouldn't know that.
They'll recall the front piers, right? I mean, the front
Isn't that
piers.
foundation painted anyway?
It's painted anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's those heavily, chamfered blocks
Rusticated
that really
block,
and then if you actually look at the front porch, the block that runs across the front is a completely different configuration. I don't know whether or not that was added later.
I think that
they might-
apron was infilled at a later date. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, it was infilled after a car drove through the front porch.
Oh, yeah, maybe that would do it.
The previous owners apparently have a photograph that was in the newspaper of the car that continued up Maple right into their front porch.
Oh, thus the guardrail. Okay.
That's the guardrail, yeah. So, yeah, I'd love to see that happen. But frankly, if it doesn't, once it's painted, pretty minimal kind of stuff.
This is Bill Childs. I think this is a nice solution, Phil. I like the idea of the small shed on this main composition. I think you picked up the detailing nicely with the rafter tails, the massing. My only comment would be at the door, could you use the same mutton pattern as the windows? I noticed the side elevation has one with a traditional 9 light, but is it possible just to make the muttons the same as the windows, just in that man door? Other than that, I think you did a nice job on it. It looks really good.
They may consider that, but actually that's a door. That's the door to the kitchen.
Oh, okay.
That's an existing door we're just reusing right now.
Okay.
Again, similar budgetary problem.
And the muttons, they're not removable muttons, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. These are simulated divided light, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah, no, they're nice windows. They're Pella windows, so.
Very good. Seems to be a good solution. I move to approve as presented.
Second.
I would like to take this time ever so briefly to note that we all are impressed by the efforts that Johnny Appleseed put forth in his lifetime, traveling and planting apple seeds everywhere so we could have apples. And Phil Kep is in charge of taking shutters off of every house.
Noble
I was
cause.
wondering where you were going with that.
I know, I'm like, uh-oh, here it comes.
Good one, Steve.
Oh.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have a motion by King, seconded by Naylor. Roll call, King,
Yes.
Naylor,
Yes.
Childs.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
That completes the agenda.
Yes, it does. Very
Christie,
good.
is anybody out there that needs to talk to us?
I have one. Oh, I had one comment when it's appropriate to speak.
Okay,
If there are attendees who'd like to speak, please use the raise your hand button on the Zoom platform. No takers, Harry. Go ahead, Steve.
Very good. I declare this meeting adjourned.
Okay, I think Bill
Bill
has
has a
one
comment.
comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill, yes.
I just had one comment. As far as signs in Sugar Falls, I know we have a zoning code on that, but signs are so important in a village or a town. If you go to strip centers, you see even up on Mayfield or any other place, it ruins the ambiance and the feel of a community. I don't know if this is even possible, but I'm just throwing this out as an idea. There's a firm in Pittsburgh called UDA, which is Urban Design Associates. And what they do is do design guidelines all over the country. And
Signage?
yeah, see if they could just do a little section on our signs to help us keep the feel and essence and look of Sugar Falls, because I really feel strongly about that Howard Hanna sign. And unfortunately, it's their colors that's really doing it. But that's just going to start to have more companies and people come in and say, well, their sign's this big and this colorful. Why can't we do that? And you're going to start losing the integrity and the feel. There should be a code or something that shows little dainty signs, the posts, and it gives a more of a pedestrian feel and a delicacy and a better feel for a community. I'm sure many of you have been up to the East Coast and seen those little villages, and they're all consistent. And there's a lot of these companies that will conform to whatever those design guidelines are, even though it's not their colors and stuff, if they want to be a part of this village or community, and just to keep the consistency and integrity and the feel of Sugar Falls. That's all I'd like to say.
I think Village Council is receptive to that idea. Aaron Grube has been working to update the design guidelines. And I think, you know, with what's going on now and budget changes at the moment, you know, they may not be able to take that on, but I think that's a great idea that maybe we put an amendment on with just signage, because if we're starting to see this issue come in. Because these signs
No, I just want to register a different opinion, and it's probably where we actually, I mean, I am so happy that Chagrin does not regulate colors. I don't want it. I think it's much more alive than Gates Mills. I don't want a white and black town. And I think it's fine if you have a green sign. And I don't think it's ruining anything. It's going to come and go, you know, and then someday someone else will have it. But I mean, if you go up and down Main Street, I don't think it would be enhanced by having all the buildings the same color. We've got various colors. We've got different signs. It hasn't ruined our town yet. And I think tightening down that regulation is just taking us somewhere we haven't been and don't need to go.
I'm sort of in the middle. I've seen our signage evolve in the time that I've been on the board. There was a time when we fought long and hard against color and corporate logos, and somewhere along in the 20 years that I've been doing this, we went from not allowing them to allowing them, and or maybe we went from allowing them to not allowing them to back to allowing them. But the evolution is you know, the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth. I kind of agree with, I have trouble with Howard Hanna's, and I have trouble with, you know, if they've been here for 40 years, they're the big dog in town. They didn't start out that way. They've never had that big a sign, that garish, that bold a sign, and they've managed to stay alive. And so now, what are we saying? That you're not going to continue to be a member of our community because you can't put up a sign that's that big and that much of a billboard? If I had my druthers, I'd take the BP sign down. It's too big and it's too bold. But
I guess I still feel burned by, I think we overreached a little with Jim Benjamin and the house on Robbins Court. And what we got was a legal pushback, and we ended up with completely losing the historic house versus having a less than perfect connection to it, but we lost the connector. We got that whole thing jammed down our throats. And this is going to go the same way in my mind.
All right,
The codes
if I
now,
could say
so-
something, if I could say something to Mr. Childs with his comments, I would suggest that maybe he put something in writing and address it to the chief administrative officer and planning and zoning for a topic of discussion, because it has to start at the planning and zoning level. If you want to make some changes and even to get it on the agenda, then I would suggest that maybe a few of the ABR members come to the planning and zoning meeting and talk about it.
Also, the beauty of these meetings
Yep.
being recorded now, if Nancy's not present today, which I don't see her, she can go look and see like a case study of why this discussion is coming up too.
Correct.
Dan is basing their approval on measurements only. And, you know, well, it's this big, it's that big, and it meets the guidelines. Well, it's the measurement guidelines, yes. But how it affects that particular part of town, that's the main issue.
Aesthetics is an important part, and it's, you know, in your purview, and that's tough to wrestle with, so understand where you're coming from.
Harry,
Yes.
Nancy is actually on the line and is raising her hand. Can I unmute her so she can have the opportunity to speak?
Her
Can
ears
I
must
just
have been burned.
excuse me, can I just ask, do you guys want this in the minutes, or is this just a topic of conversation that you don't want in these?
Yes, let's keep it in the minutes.
I think
Okay.
it should be public record.
Okay, I just
Okay,
wanted to make
Nancy, I
sure.
promoted you to a panelist. You're welcome to speak in the discussion.
Oh, well, I just wanted you to know that I'm in the meeting and I've been in the entire meeting, find it all very interesting, and I'm working on an email right now with some comments and code sections and so forth.
Okay.
That I'll send to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
So P and Z is on it. We've been talking about design guidelines and so forth.
Alrighty.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Nancy.
Further comments? This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good ideas by everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.